For breaking news, go to iDiskiTimes.co.za. Hello and welcome to iDiskiTV. My name is Nkululeko Nkewu. I'm with Lindo Pep and Rhulani Mokwena. Thank you very much for joining us on iDiskiTV. We try every Monday, whenever there's topics to discuss, to talk whatever is happening contemporarily in South African football. So it's that time again this Monday where we discuss some of the topics. We'll talk about Chiefs and Sundowns this past weekend. They were in Africa. How did it look like? Are there any early signs of concern or early signs of promise for either team? And then, as we should, MC Alger from Algeria are playing Mamelodi Sundowns. It will play at 9 p.m. on Friday. That's a fixture to look forward to. Why? Because the coach Rhulani Mokwena, coaches MC Alger. He'll be playing against his former team, Mamelodi Sundowns. MC Alger, in case you've forgotten, Mohamed goes to Algeria as a king. He's a prince of Algeria, basically. He scores 2 goals against Belouizdad in the group stages for Pirates last season in the CAF Champions League. And in the quarterfinals, he scores 1 goal, the winning goal of that game for Orlando Pirates as they eliminate MC Alger. I remember that game. They were so defensive. And in the second half, Mohamed chips the ball over the goalkeeper, 1v1, and he wins the tie for Orlando Pirates. So that's MC Alger with a new coach called Rhulani Mokwena. They lost on Friday. I remember watching them against Al Hilal. So they're playing against Mamelodi Sundowns. Maybe it's a must-win for him. Lindo Pep, thank you very much for joining us, sir. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm good, Mr. K. I'm smiling because you're talking about that Sundowns and Rhulani
It's
game.
our job to build up this case.
I know. No, I'm actually smiling and laughing because someone was actually saying to me that I know ukuthi MC Dlani, what type of fish, who cooks the fish, who's the training They say I even know the person that prepares the clothing, you know, the apparel for the players. But exciting game, actually.
Absolutely. Let's go back to the weekend. Wins for Stellenbosch.
Yeah.
It was a late win. It was a life or soul destroying to watch Stellenbosch. Number one, they have to go away from home. Number two, there's barely like 200 or 300 people at the stadium.
Yep.
Number three, I'm concerned about them that they look lethargic. They don't look like a squad that should be participating in Africa. And then they are participating in Africa. And you see them on the log standing in the Betway Premiership. And you're like, oh, I understand now. And yesterday, I saw maybe 20 or 30 minutes of that game. And they scored a last-minute winner. And I thought that game was just 0-0. It wasn't going anywhere. I'm worried about them. But won't talk about them now. Sundowns against Limpopo. Were there any signs of concerns as you watched the Sundowns? Promising from Nuno Santos, I think he scored 2 goals, 1 assist. Miguel Jaisinho as well. We thought Limpopo would lose, and they lost.
Yeah.
Any takeaways from that? Of course, we talked about the game, but now that you remember the game 2 days later, anything to take away from there?
Yeah, Mr. Nkewu, when you're watching the highlights, it seems like Mamelodi Sundowns was playing exceptional football. But if you look at the first half and you are honest and the feelings, because I went to rewatch the game, I think what we didn't mention in the analysis is that they created 2 clear opportunities where they should have led the game 3-0, maybe in the first half.
But I remember there was a cross to a striker, Matthews or Renas, one of them in the box, and he's supposed just to head it down.
Yeah, that was Matthews.
That's a clear-cut goal.
Clear-cut. There's one that Ikram receives in the box. I thought he should have done better. But I think Mamelodi Sundowns, in my opinion, from a preparation perspective, they went into this game expecting to destroy Limpopo.
Yeah.
And that was the approach from the players. I understand the Mamelodi Sundowns players will always be professional from an approach. This is a competition that the team takes very seriously.
Sure.
And the team has been successful over the years in terms of football heritage. But going into that game, when you look at the first half and the tactical approach, I thought we looked lethargic, in my opinion. We looked very pragmatic. I thought that we could have moved the ball a little bit quicker. We needed deep runners. We needed dynamic runs from midfield going into the front line. Not having a right winger is something that the club needs to address, in my opinion, because you can always cause a threat on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side.
I think there's a disconnection between what the fans think is being said on the analysis and what is happening in the game. So this will always be just a disconnection, and that's why I don't engage much in what the fan is saying. But I want to just go somewhere with this, that Sundowns winning 3-1 is not just Sundowns winning 3-1. There's a game, there's a scoreline. Some people watch highlights and they think they saw the whole thing. There is a problem that Sundowns has been faced with in Africa. They have a hurdle that they cannot jump over. That's the semifinals normally. This year, they went to the final. But the problem is still there. It's a problem of failing to break a low block. Yeah. If you watch them, I look at Champions League and also look at high-profile cup competitions. All the duels that Sundowns plays with Pirates are similar to Champions League matches. And the problem that's happening with Sundowns, and it's not a disaster. The obstacle for Sundowns is that everyone kind of knows what to expect, which is we will allow you to have the ball shifted as much as you can, pass it 1,000 times, but if we close certain doors, you will not be able to score. And I looked at this game this past weekend in Lupopo. This is not criticism. It's an expectation because they are the best in terms of performance in the country, and they've been for a long time. That in order for you to become a Champions League winning team, you're going to have to try to be more creative. Now, with the pass, they were. The first goal was a creative pass. It had vision. But there were not enough of those moments where people taking people on. This game was a practice in my mind
for
the long term. It has nothing to do with Sundowns supposed to beat Lupopo. We saw them at Pirates. But practice how you're going to look like in the Champions League.
Mr. Nkewu, these guys have won the league 8 times in a row. And every coach probably has a blueprint now. In the CAF Champions League, the team has done exceptionally well. But you also have to mention things like when they go into Africa, right, Mr. Nkewu, there needs to be a second idea. And it's something that we spoke about a lot.
Always talk about.
Right? But from a defensive perspective, it's very difficult to break those African defenses because they focus on two things. And they've got the most tactical European coaches. Focus on the ball carrier because he's the one that has to find the pass. So make sure you make him uncomfortable. And then the other ones, because they've got tall players. That's why when you go into North Africa, you look at MC Alger, you look at Al Ahly, they always have an African defensive midfielder.
Sure.
Because his biggest responsibility is to focus on the ball that comes from deep.
Even the Pyramids.
Even the Pyramids had it at the very same.
Forgot his name, Paulo Torre or something like
Focus on the run. Their biggest responsibility, focus on the run, make sure that the ball carrier. So now you need a second idea. What is the second idea? That's the dribbling, and that's why Upito was successful with Abu Pesita, with Abu Kama Pilat. And nobody speaks about those, the CBD and Abu Kama Pilat because of the effectiveness that they used to have in African football. Upito used to be smart where we play Upesi as a 10 and Adlalu Kama as a false 9 because he knew he needed nippy, quick, and dribbling wizards that are able to manipulate the ball. And I felt that when you are watching Mamelodi Sundowns, for sure, we can break a line, we can break a pass. But for me, when you go into the later stages of the competition, it's about finer details. It's about finer margins. Mamelodi Sundowns has always been a dominant team, but now they need to convert that dominance into goals, which is something that they struggle to. How to break a low block, which is the most difficult thing in football. But now the anticipation of the football heritage that has been happening at the club is we were expecting this season they would bring in players that can unlock that. And initially, when we spoke over the weekend, we said the disappointment is with Luke Ribeiro going and the club releasing those kind of players. But also, Ununo, there's some positives in that because going into January, they're playing 2 games now. Going into January, they have an opportunity to sign players because they would have played.
That's a good point. Actually.
They've got 4 games to play in the group
but
stages.
Here's where the disconnect lies. And I think I'm trying to see this from the perspective of Ukado. So this is not criticism. That do they see that as their problem too? So as we look at Sundowns and see, Uti, your problem is when people play a low block, there's an obstacle, you can't break it at the highest level. You can win Betway Premiership matches. At the highest level in Champions League, you have this problem. Does the technical team think that they also have that problem now?
I think Miguel Cardoso had that plan last year, and that's the reason why he reached the CAF Champions League final. But for me, he goes into the media and he speaks about being defensive nonsense. He used words like that. I think he's more frustrated about this positional football and Shushan and Piano. The fact that he uses a midfielder on the right-hand side tells you that his biggest obsession this year is control. Because when people speak in and around him, they are telling him about control. They're telling him about dominance. They're telling him about a team that scores goals. And that's the kind of team he's trying to build. He's not trying to play an effective game. When he came into this country, he didn't play a systematic game. He played an effective game. A game that scored, my interview, artist for one reason. If you remember very well, Sundowns to score 4, because that was effective. And he coached something that he understood. At this present moment in time, I feel like he's the head coach, he's the face of the club, but I don't think he makes all the decisions. And you might find out, Mr. Nkewu, that him losing 5 trophies, which is the Nedbank Cup, the Club World Cup, the MTN 8, and the Culling Cup, there's a lack of trust within the board, within the technical team. Mamelodi Sundowns is not a team that only relies on the technical team. They've got a technical director, they've got a sporting director. There's a reason why every club,
in and around the club.
There's a reason why every club has those people. If you understand the role of a technical director, yes, it's not to choose the starting lineup going into the game on Saturday, but it's to influence the coach with a different eye, to say, these are the tactical patterns that we want to play, these are the triggers, this is the game plan.
Yeah. Asibambe Kanjwa, thank you so much. I love this. This was just a revisiting
Sure.
of the past weekend. Now I want to talk about what we learned from last night.
Yeah.
So as we went home to our various homes, we were watching Chiefs
Mm-hmm.
Masry in Egypt. Very quickly before we talk about, we preview Rhulani and Sundowns MC Algeria. That's going to be a blockbuster
Yeah.
fixture for many reasons, of course. For Chiefs, for me, I like the fact that there wasn't too much of a difference between MC Alger and the Chiefs. So that's a positive that they didn't beat you 4-1. And also, like, even from a playmaking perspective, they didn't beat you that much. I think that the Chiefs we see in the Betway Premiership is still the Chiefs that we see in Africa in terms of lack of creativity, lack of play. Umthetwa is not going to suddenly become comfortable with passing. Modi is not going to suddenly become a dribbler. It is up to Chiefs to be able to notice that there are limitations with certain players. Ucele is not going to suddenly not be on and off. Last time we saw him was at Durban City in the second half, and then we haven't seen him. Ucele, I'm sure he's trying from the bottom of his heart. He's trying. So we picked up things about Chiefs that we already know. But what I noticed was that at least the gap with Al Masry and the Chiefs wasn't that much. In fact, that's why I emphasized yesterday in some of the videos to say the goals that they scored were set pieces. And we know who North Africans are. From your perspective, what were some of the maybe observations we never got to talk about in your video, and maybe some of the positives as well with Chiefs? Yes, they lost 2-1. Is there anything positive that they can take away from the game?
Mr. Nkewu, lessons, more especially for the young players. But let me start by speaking about the coaches. For Kaizer Chiefs, I agree with Brian Baloyi. And it's something that I was listening to before coming to work.
Sure.
And he said the two coaches, for them to succeed at Kaizer Chiefs, because firstly they have to understand the culture, understand the landscape and the culture of how a South African footballer play. They will need a technical director to help them, because they came with a coach, Unabi, who was responsible for taking all the blame and implementing certain strategies within the football club. For me, I feel like the coaches, it will take them longer to understand what they are trying to do and the current players that they have. Number two, you have to speak about the players on the pitch. I think that Kaizer Chiefs is also lacking players with leadership. Utabo Cele is a player also that played in the second division as a Portugal, which is the NFT, which also, with the biggest question I have with Utabo Cele and this positiveness or whether negativeness is he the player to lead the Kaizer Chiefs? And for me,
as a junior international, we saw a good player.
I spoke about him yesterday.
We can't dismiss that part, that when we saw him go under 20 in the Olympics, he was a decent player as we saw him, and our eyes don't lie. I don't know what is it about the environment that as soon as you get there, suddenly you forget who you were.
In Europe, there's leagues that make and break a player. There's where you play matters in Europe, Mr. Nkewu. And we've seen with so many players that have come that played in Europe and they come into the country and they don't show. We've got an exception of George Matlo, who hasn't shown up ever since he came to Europe. You can count so many of them. For me, the biggest thing at Kaizer Chiefs is successful clubs are led by players. Do they have players
especially
that
on
can
the field.
lead, more especially with a big institution like Kaizer Chiefs? Do they have players that lead the team on the pitch? And those are the biggest questions. And for me, another thing that you need to question is the level of creativity at Kaizer Chiefs. They are playing players in uncomfortable positions. I don't want to say wrong, because when you watch him he looks uncomfortable as a number 10. When you watch Villa playing on the right-hand side, he looks uncomfortable. But for me, I'm expecting them to use the CAF Champions League as a leeway domestic to say, let's make sure that we make all those mistakes that we are not allowed to make in the Betway Premiership, because we will be judged with this. But with this, maybe this is an opportunity for us to practice our passing patterns defensively, be a little bit organized, because we are playing an away game, understand how to play an effective game, understand how to play a systematic game, be effective in certain positions. What are we trying to implement? When you get into domestic, because maybe the quality is not as much as Al Nasir, then that maybe does not become easy, but at least there's a reference to say, okay, when we get from the back, we build up from the back, we want to play a progressive pass in the line, we take it wide, we bring in a cross. Let it be clear in terms of what we are trying to do, what ideology we are trying to implement. You don't want to watch Kaizer Chiefs and get confused. Are they playing on a transition? Are they playing on a counter? Are they pragmatic? Are they trying to keep position? So for me, I would like to encourage the coaches to emphasize on playing their ball players. Give confidence to the ball-playing players so that they can control the game for you. And then now you've got players about understanding control chaos that don't need a lot of coaching, but they need structure and guidance. You encourage Uvelepa, you give him game time. Another thing with the Kaizer Chiefs coaches, they need to trust the young players. They need to give the young players an opportunity to play. And also, Mr. Nkewu, I give opportunity to play. I don't mean give. I mean trust. trust that as much as they're trusting him to, can you trust to Villa? Can you trust to Velepai? Can you trust so many of the young players that they brought into that squad? Trust Umabuye. Why did you bring in Umabuye if you're not trusting him? Where's Ndlovu? They brought in all those midfielders who are hard runners. You said something very important. You said, and I was thinking about it, I said, Kaizer Chiefs probably doesn't need to play with the number 10. Maybe they can change the tactical structure and have 3 solid midfielders like a Jürgen Klopp team who are hard runners. You've got Ndlovu, you've got Umabuye, who can play both Guma half spaces and hard runners in terms of box to box. Then you can choose which type of midfielder you want to play. Do I want to keep the ball today? Maybe I introduce Ucele as a ball player. If I don't...
Umthetho, sorry to cut you just on that point. Umthetho, I'm looking at the time, but I just want us to touch on this maybe for 2 minutes. Umthetho is an enigma because he's always there where the ball is. So in terms of... I don't know whether it's a coincidence or in a sense of timing to be where the ball will be. So he breaks the play for you, which is good. That's what you always want from a defensive midfielder.
Yes.
Now, the negative is, and I think it's similar to Stole, the player that we were arguing about once upon a time, is that the negative is that once you get that ball, what are you going to do with it? And I think Umthetho, and the football is such a beautiful thing in that there's not just negative aspects of someone. There's also the positive. Is that he's just always there when a play has to be broken and he breaks them. But as soon as he gets that ball, he gives it away. Now, what do you do as a coach? Yes, you want a defensive midfielder who can break that play, but you also want him to find Ucele. You also want him, because if he's going to be behind Ndlovu and Ucele or Mabuwe, whoever one of them, if he's going to be behind them, he can mark for them, protect his back four. But he's going to have to give it back to them so that they can feed it to the wide players or the number 9.
And that's the challenge that we have with Umthetho. Umthetho is not a bad player. And I always say,
yes,
you choose
not
to see
100% bad.
You choose to see it or you don't want to see it. For me, the only things, and that's why I always say players have an opportunity to improve. What we're asking from Umthetho is, okay, Sharp, you've recycled the ball. Yes, you've recovered the ball, intercepted the ball. Find your teammate. Sometimes there's an action in the game where he intercepts the ball. For me, what I want to see from Umthetho, and this is just an encouragement from a brother to brother, because we are all working, is can you play football as if you believe you are the best? Maybe that can help, because for me, from a tactical, maybe he's good tactically. Technically, he can improve. Psychologically, can I see a player that plays for pride? Can I see a player that plays for himself and his family, that believes that he belongs at Kaizer Chiefs? Do you know why it's Nqanqu Villa? It's because despite the technical that maybe it might not be clicking right now, is the arrogance and the psychological profile that he has. He doesn't feel out of place at Kaizer Chiefs. And at Kaizer Chiefs, for you, sometimes the character matters. To say, enter that field believing that I'm going to deliver.
I think from a coaching perspective, though, I agree with the points that you're making. Of course, all of us need to be confident. Even to shoot videos, we have to be confident.
For sure.
Perhaps he can even be confident in his mind. But for me and you are coaches, and we love the game, and we watch the game. What I saw when he received... So, it's positive that he gets the ball. He intercepts it. What I saw, and I'm seeing in every game, is that I'm like, now he's got it, and he's afraid to pass it. Like, I think his biggest fear now is to pass it, because I think he also knows that everyone knows that the problem is the finding of the teammate. Like, the confidence is I can break this play. Like Ukatsande, I can break this play. And then there's this 5-second spell where, oh my word, what is he going to do now? And I think maybe he's getting into his head, and this is where he's going to need coaches.
Mr. Nkewu, Kaizer Chiefs plays 90% of their games owning position. They are playing against Emakesi, Pulukwanesi. Majority of the time, they prepare those games to dominate those games. So now this is the question that he has to ask himself. Will I only focus on 100% pass completion, interception, or I'm going to the game to dominate? Because that's what's crucial at Kaizer Chiefs. Yes, when you're playing against a Orlando Pirates, Mamelodi Sundowns, you need a different profile. Even Sundowns, even Pirates plays different when they play against big clubs. So for me, that's the arrogance that they need in midfield to believe that they're best.
But from a coaching, Lindo, like, what would you be doing to help him? Because I don't know, if someone, Unai, Ulpeti pass or Aganalo, like, what do you, because yes, he gets the ball, and this is, I have to emphasize this, he does get the ball. But then he misplaces it to someone else. Maybe out of 10 times, 7 times, he'll give it to the opposition, or the weight of the pass is not even good for the midfielder, his partner, to turn with and create an opportunity. So what do we do from a coaching thinking? I think Utentens would be a perfect coach for this as well.
So small-sided games, Mr. Nkewu. That's the only thing that can help him. I put him go a small-sided game. I teach him the master of basics. Mr. Nkewu, do you remember when I said to you, the difference between the North Africans and us is the basics.
Yeah, first thing you mentioned yesterday was how Masry receives turns with the ball, pass,
Simple.
find a man who's free.
Everyone has done this. Ngicela umuntu abeke ibhone ekhoneni, umthetho aze kuye, basimphosela ibhola kuma ankle, inside foot, lace, half volley, chest, basic stuff. Those are the things that you understand. Pass la ubheke khona, know when to turn. If umuntu pressa ngayi receiver ngapha, if umuntu pressa ngapha receiver ngapha. Those are basic stuff. That's an entry midfielder in professional football.
All of them must have
All of them must have that.
Yeah.
Simple thing. And for me, irondo izomnceda ngani critical thinking quick feet, decision making. And then now you can improve as a football player. Because to be honest with you,
we're out of time.
Sure.
I'm so sorry. I apologize.
Yeah.
We have done over 20 minutes. So we'll dedicate 5 minutes. Khaukelo, please bear with us. If your battery runs out, it has run out. It doesn't matter. The people will see that the episode has ended.
Yeah.
Coach Rhulani is back. We spoke about him. Of course, the potential that he will face Sundowns. He lost to Al Hilal. It wasn't a great game as I saw that game. I was taking actually notes literally as I was watching that game with Al Hilal and the MC Algeria. And they lost 2-1. Of course, it's not the same Coach Rhulani in terms of South Africa. That means he's adaptable enough to understand that he doesn't have the same players in terms of how he plays. Sundowns, on the other hand, they are the ones who are traveling.
Yeah.
It's Sundowns.
Playing away.
What would they want to get out of this game? How should they approach it?
When you're talking about Rhulani, you're talking about an architect, somebody who's built that Mamelodi Sundowns system. So he knows all the psychological, the cracks in that system.
Oh,
so
una password.
uphethe onke ama-password. Uphethe ama-password ayi-10 ushilo compare.
His best friends are Mutau,
Yeah, Mutau,
Debza.
Debza.
They cry when he leaves the club.
He knows the dressing room dynamic. So he has the blueprint. He's one of the architects. Joba, that's why I'm giving him a title. He's going into this game as an architect. And Umigel is going in that game as a machine. He has to prove something. He has to show. For me, this is the most interesting game I think I'm going to analyze as an analyst because I'm interested to see what Miguel Cardoso will do going into a game where I believe that he's playing against one of the best football brains in African football because he's not just a coach, he's a system. He's going into that game knowing exactly what Rhulani is going to try to do.
Well, sometimes in football we say 1 + 1 is equals to 11.
Yeah.
Because they lost to Al Hilal, which is not a great team, does that mean Sundowns are the favourites?
No. It's going away. Playing away in the CAF Champions League is always a difficult game. For me, what impressed me the most with the model here game playing Rhulani is the defensive now. Because back in the days, I always used to question some of the defense. I always thought to myself, respect defending, just like Pep.
Yeah.
Respect defending. You can't defend Rivaldo Kutse no Grant, where you would invert another centre back. Respect. That's why I was ngomvala. But with Mamelodi Sundowns, the biggest questions I also have is how do you break that defensive low block? Do you have a dribbler? Are you going to rely on Rashino to break a pass? Rhulani is a smart coach with the technical team. They will anticipate those deep passes very early. So I'm expecting Cardoso to use a little bit of speed. I'm expecting him to add a little bit of deep runs going into midfield. So now control is not important in this game. The defensive block has to be solid between the base of the team, which is Utebza, the two centre backs and the goalkeeper. That base has to be solid. Defensively, Abumdao and Mudiba, they don't have to play a double position. They always have to be nearer because they need to rely on their front line. Now Nuno needs to come to the party. I've always said, good player, but I need him to rise in big games. With Rhulani, it's a very simple game. North African football, their pattern of play is always simple. Build out from the back, find the midfielders, and then find they've got special players in wider areas. And they always invest in players that Abakwazi Ugenzi is into out of nothing. So I'm expecting a battle in wider areas. The connection between the right back and the connection between the right and the winger, the
left and right wingers.
The full backs and the wingers.
Sure.
Need to be inclined at Mamelodi Sundowns. I think that's where the target is. Because
so Matthews, for example, just to add on what you're saying, Matthews will have to have a relationship no Mudiba. And then whoever's on the right, I don't know why you're experimenting there, because there was no one. If it's Salis, no Mudau, there needs to be a lot of communication in terms of don't give me a 2v1. Mudau should be able to say to Salis, unganginikeza a 2v1, your fullback is your fullback, don't leave me stranded.
Because you know why? Rest assured, Rhulani will block the central space. He knows that for me to not allow Mamelodi Sundowns to perform, I have to counter that. So for me, I'm expecting a very narrow.
Do you think, on that point, do you think because he's got the password, and the antidote to this dominant style of play is to some degree we've seen with Paris, just allow them to have the ball, and not low block per se, but defensively disciplined. Do you think he might have that in him? Because of course there's also the ego at play. Yes, he's matured, and yes, I saw him with Al Hilal that he is amplifying the skills of the North Africans to be defensively sound and then hit on the counter. Do you think he will be happy when Sundowns has 700 passes and then una 200 passes?
He cannot be emotional. For me, that's growth in his coaching. Play that game with less emotions. It's about the result, not the performance for him. Because for him, even if he plays well and doesn't win, the newspapers would say Mamelodi Sundowns beat Rhulani. For him, he has to be level-headed. Yeah. He knows that that game is about 5 matches.
It also has a must-win element to it because he's lost the first game. If he loses the second one, it's going to be difficult.
He's extremely under pressure. He's the Mamelodi Sundowns of Algeria. He's got the resources, he's got the players. Yes, it's his first season, he's improving that squad. But Jobang Jela, thank you. For the first time, don't be surprised if you see a Rhulani team being pragmatic, playing on fast counter-attacks, making sure that they make the midfield narrow to break those passes that Mamelodi Sundowns. Remember, if you have Ununo no Rashin, they want to pass. So the first tactical plan is how do we intercept those passes? And after intercepting those passes, where is the space? They will target to open. How do teams target to open? And they don't target team Nepal Hamba Pants. Shanghai, they loop it behind him. Yeah. They loop it behind him because also the anticipation and the space to defend between Ukupido and that space is too large. If you play the ball, if you make a decision to go, you're opening the central corridor. And if you decide to stay, the winger receives free.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Sometimes the talk about the game is more interesting than the game itself. Thank you so much to Lindo Pep. Thank you very much to Khaukelo Sibata as well. At 9 p.m., Mamelodi Sundowns on Friday will be visiting the country of Algeria, the city of Algiers. This is the city where Mohamed Kota announced himself, maybe to the eyes of Michael Emenalo, who's running the Saudi Pro League from a signing perspective. There was a change in approach in terms of who to sign for the Saudis. They were like, okay, many of the Europeans want to still play in the UEFA Champions League, and they don't want us to splash 200 million on one player. Maybe let's look at rising talents from different leagues which are credible. They looked at Africa. They looked at the CAF Champions League. That's why they want Mufukeng. And that's why they got Umuha Kota, because Champions League, of course, the Arabic countries are connected to the Arabic countries in the Middle East, and they see each other when they play sporting events. And maybe from there, when Mohamed Kota scores 2 goals against Belo Wizardad in Algeria, against MC Alger in Alger, maybe that's where then, as you shine, you get yourself a move or earn yourself a move to Saudi. You know, Elias Mokwena as well. Yes, thank you. And it was scored this past weekend as well. Elias Mokwena. When you do well in continental football, you earn yourself a move to Saudi. So maybe there's that. That's the carrot to dangle to Sundowns players to say go and perform there. Maybe one of you will leave. Although of course you do not need that money because you're well taken care of at Sundowns. But if you're a player and you're ambitious, performing at the CAF Champions League. That will be at 9 p.m. Tomorrow will be here for Orlando Pirates playing in the Betway Premiership. Thank you for watching us.
Boom.